You're watching the Urban Debate Room now. Thank you for joining us. This is the latest in the Aadhaar case that is being heard by the 5-judge bench in the Supreme Court. Remember, the Supreme Court is hearing the big Aadhaar case to decide, given our fundamental right to privacy, if there is any sort of constitutional validity to making Aadhaar compulsory. This is what has happened over the last 2 days. The court has asked the centre if the Aadhaar data can be misused to influence elections. The Supreme Court said, these are not imaginary fears, these are very real fears. Will democracy survive if individual data is used to manipulate poll outcomes? Now, in response, the central government's defense attorney said, we don't have the algorithms that Facebook and Google have to analyze data. Do not compare Aadhaar with Cambridge Analytica, which was a whole hue and cry about a couple of weeks ago. It also said that it cannot share co-biometrics under the Aadhaar Act. The Supreme Court to the centre, what is the point of involving private entities in Aadhaar infrastructure? We're laying down a law which will affect future generations, to which the centre's response was, we only share basic data of authenticating identity. We don't have the capacity to analyze data. We only authenticate a person's identity. The Supreme Court also flagged off some of the risks that are believed exist in our Aadhaar system. It said a single entity controls all of the data of every single citizen of the country. So a leak to the outside world would be a risk. The court also demanded safeguards to be introduced into the system. The question that we're asking today is the same question that the Supreme Court of India asked of the Government of India. Is it possible to use this Aadhaar data to manipulate an election? What will be left of our democracy if that's the case? And even if we want to trust that the UADI and the Government of India is never going to do anything like this, what happens if someone leaks that data out and a third party, completely unconnected to these two entities, manipulates that data to win elections? Is that a risk we're running, given the fact that the Supreme Court believes it's a risk we're running? Phone lines are open. In the meantime, on the show with me, Vinit Goenka, member of the Governing Council of the CRIS and former National Co-Convener of Information Technology with the BJP. Now, I must point out here, Vinit Goenka has been extremely patient, has given us his time every time we've discussed Aadhaar, and he's also currently working with the government and in the government on data protection. So this is something he keenly understands. Nikhil Pava is the editor of Media Nama. Shailesh Gandhi, former Chief Information Commissioner. Pawan Duggal, senior advocate of the Supreme Court, understands cyber law very, very clearly and also represents one of the petitioners in the Aadhaar case. Mr. Sanjay Hegde is a senior advocate with the Supreme Court. Ashish Dikshit, advocate with the Supreme Court. Ritesh Bhatia, cyber security expert. I thank all of you for joining us on the show. I'm going to start, with Mr. Sanjay Hegde. Mr. Hegde, thank you for joining us. This statement that the Supreme Court, or the question that the Supreme Court asked, will democracy survive if individual data is used to manipulate a poll outcome? Do you believe that that is a risk we're running?
Well, see, data is value neutral. You store data. Then it comes to a question of how it is used. Now, if you store the data of every Indian and then that data can be used to across various other databases to link you, they know your spending patterns, they know your preferences, they know almost everything about you, then you can micromanage the message. Just let me give you an example as to what happened in the US. The Trump people using Cambridge Analytica data, when they were approaching Democratic-leaning voters who had worked against Hillary, had worked for Bernie, just told these people, why are you bothering to vote? Anyway, Hillary will win. You might as well stay at home because after all, you were a Bernie supporter. Now, listen. They did not waste time saying, please vote for Trump. This is the kind of micromanaging of the message which then can influence elections over a large scale. Now, if data which is stored for ostensibly by a government for Aadhaar purposes for purposes of giving out subsidies or for any other purposes which are valid under the Act, gets into wrong hands, or if an incumbent government decides to use it, what are the safeguards? That is the essential question that the Supreme Court is asking. And I do not see any credible answer which can satisfy that such data will never be used, because unless you have very strict penalties for such misuse, you effectively cannot safeguard that data being used for political purposes in addition to administrative purposes.
The data could be used for political and administrative purposes. Dilip Goenka, do you want to respond to that? Because the accusation is not that the government will use it, but what if it leaks and somebody else uses it? Isn't that a real threat?
Well, various types of data are available in the world. Be it Facebook data, be it credit card data, be it data of voter list, be it data of a ration card. Now, if somebody wants to do a fraud, he can do it. Do we stop because somebody wants to do a fraud? We'll have to put an investigation team for that. We'll have to put in laws. We'll have to educate people not to do that. And then we'll have to put in stricter laws for that. We cannot stop innovations and processes of good governance just because we have an apprehension. This hyperphobia which has been created by a few people can be beaten down. This is not possible. I think Aadhaar is more or less very secured. And if you have to bypass, I can get your data by various means. I can go to your Facebook, I can go to your Twitter account, I can shadow you and then get the data. But that is an act of intrusion. That's an illegal act. Don't create parallels between this. Illegal act can be done by anybody from any sources. So that does not make Aadhaar vulnerable. Aadhaar is safe, it's useful.
All right, I'm not sure if Nikhil Pava can hear us just yet, but I'm going to give Sanjay Hegde an opportunity to rebut. Sanjay Hegde, I saw you shake your head. Do you want to rebut what Dilip Goenka just said?
Yes, essentially you've heard that old proverb, put not all your eggs into one basket. If you put all your data eggs in one basket, it is available to not only those who store it, but to those who can get at it by any means. And then who will have responsibility when the data gets out? That data is a gold mine for marketers. It is also a gold mine for those who want to influence elections. It is a gold mine for various reasons. The real question is, do you intrusively seek more and more data about your citizens, put it all together and then if it gets out of hand, you say, oh, no, that's par for the course. Nothing can be done about it.
All right, let me bring in the rest of my panelists at this point. Dilip Goenka, you're going to have to wait until everybody has made their opening statements. Pawan Dugal, I want you to react to what the Supreme Court is asking. And they've said very clearly, the court has said very clearly, these are not imaginary fears, these are real fears. Because the government and the UIDAI turned around and said, we can't respond to every single imaginary fear that people have. And we actually had the court turn around to say, these are not imaginary fears, these are real fears. So that makes me a little nervous. How do you feel about it, Pawan Dugal?
I think what the Supreme Court has said is only mirroring the ground reality. The fact remains is data is available for being misused. The Cambridge Analytica example is just one of the thousands of these firms that exist. Well, let me begin by first pointing you out to a story in the public domain which was released by WikiLeaks, which said that a majority of the Indian Aadhaar biometric database is leaked out to foreign intelligence agencies and are available with them. Surprisingly, there has been neither any denial nor any response to that particular kind of story, despite it coming from a source like WikiLeaks. Number two, with now the government joining everything together in the Aadhaar ecosystem, what started coming in is not just the significance of the security of the central identities data repository. What's at stake is the complete Aadhaar ecosystem, where a variety of different stakeholders, public and private, are having access to Aadhaar-based information. Now, it's that biometric information and other related Aadhaar information, which is available for the taking. And much that I want to be convinced that the Aadhaar Act 2016 is adequate. The fact remains is it is not at all adequate. The entire ecosystem is completely unsafe. Till 2018 now, April, India has not even mandated either a cybersecurity law or cybersecurity parameters for various stakeholders in the Aadhaar ecosystem, which is completely unsafe. So what is stopping any data entity firm, a big data analytics firm, from accessing these kind of information from a variety of sources and trying to impact Indian elections? And why not? If you can impact the Indian elections, being the elections of the biggest democracy in the world, the kind of power, the kind of kick that you can get is unimaginable. But more significantly, these are ground reality fears. I've been talking ever since Cambridge Analytica days that, look, the Indian elections are the next target. And getting this kind of biometric information and other Aadhaar-based information from the ecosystem, not from the central identities data repository, is going to be an open, sitting kind of an exercise for all kinds of data companies. We will have no effective remedies. The Information Technology Act 2000 does not give you effective remedies. The Aadhaar Act does not even stand up to the challenge, and therefore work needs to be done.
Okay. Let me bring in more voices. Pavan Duggal are we at risk? Pavan Duggal says yes. Sanjay Hegde says yes. Vinit Goenka says no. Shailesh Gandhi, are we at risk in terms of data and electoral politics?
I think it's interesting to understand, everybody has talked of Aadhaar affecting Indian elections. What is the data that Aadhaar is likely to have? Your number, your biometrics, your age, your telephone number. Maybe, let's extend that and say your telephone numbers, your credit cards, your bank accounts, and so on and so forth. It does not really have an inclination or does not have data about how you think. What are your interests? These are things that are not really linked to Aadhaar at all. Whereas Facebook, WhatsApp, Google are all able to do that. And therefore, to lay greater stress and say, oh, UID will be used to affect my political considerations, I think seems flawed and really overstretching it. It seems to be guided more out of saying, I don't trust my government. I'm willing to trust Facebook, I'm willing to trust WhatsApp. WhatsApp, in fact, is anybody not aware of the fact that WhatsApp's only business model is data? It doesn't give things free just for the milk of human kindness. And yet we all are using WhatsApp. We have no problem with that. There's no major controversy around that. But UID is a major problem. But the only thing I think you can do with data that UID is likely to have, let's stretch and say, what else will it have? Today, even my telephone provider can know where I am at what time and where. So therefore, the fact is, yes, there is greater public exposure to everything. And I feel the kind of responses that I'm hearing almost remind me of a story of a small village guy going to a big city and being taken to a swimming pool and saying, oh my God, people go about in swimsuits. Oh, so obscene. I think there's nothing really wrong. Let anybody point out how Aadhaar data will affect political choices.
Let me bring in an alternate view, and I know Nikhil Pava has his hand up, but just my response to you, Shailesh Gandhi, to do with WhatsApp is that A, I can delete WhatsApp if I don't trust it. I cannot opt out as of now from the Aadhaar system. Point number two, you said my telephone provider knows where I am at any given point of time, but my telephone provider doesn't control law and order, and that would be a reason for concern. But Nikhil Pava, do you want to respond to Shailesh Gandhi? Do you believe we are at risk, Nikhil?
Well, we are at risk, and I think Mr. Gandhi is misinformed. WhatsApp has end-to-end encryption, which means that the subject of the messages cannot be read or understood by even Facebook or even WhatsApp. It's using the open signal protocol. So, someone needs to get their facts right before making such claims. On the voter ID bit, what's happened is that the election commissioner recently said that about 32 crore voter IDs have already been linked to Aadhaar. No one's taken any consent for that linking, so we don't know how that linking is being done. But if you look at Rajasthan's Bhamasha database, that is linking voter ID with government schemes, with Aadhaar, with mobile number, which means that there's a potential for being able to micro-target people on the basis of what is the kind of schemes that they've subscribed to. So, there can be very sharp messaging that goes in from the government itself. Now, whether that information is being shared outside, we don't know. In case of Andhra, in their SRDS, they're also linking caste information, religion information. So, this 360-degree profile of citizens is possible, and linked to the mobile number, which again the DOT has mandated, you can do micro-targeting of messages to people. Apart from that, if you look at all the information that people put online, through machine learning, you can deduplicate social media accounts and get the same kind of behavioral information which Cambridge Analytica was also getting from public information, from status updates, especially on services like Twitter, etc. So, profiling is very, very easy in today's day and age, and linking Aadhaar creates that deduplication mechanism. It's not a question of whether it's going to be done, it's a question of when it's going to be done and how it's going to be done. So our elections are susceptible, especially when it comes from ruling political parties trying to influence at a micro level, at constituencies, villages, because of the kind of information that they'll have access to. So I think this entire debate about whether it's possible or not is just flawed. It is possible, it's likely to happen as well.
I love it when the panel is split, even Stevens were yeses and nos. Ashish Dikshit, yes or no?
See, as far as I am concerned, I want to go into the aspects of the observations made by Supreme Court. I think we should not, dwell too much into the observations made by Supreme Court, because these observations are made in order to understand what is the crux of the matter. These are not on the merits of the matter. The judges are entitled to ask questions, and the government and the parties are entitled to respond. This does not show that the judges have made up their mind, or it has some implication on the merits of the case. It is only to understand and go into the deeper understanding of the matter. Second thing which I would like to tell my panelists is this, that every law, which I have been saying consistently, that every law can be possibly misused, but that will never be a ground to challenge that particular law, saying that no, there are chances of it being misused, and therefore it should not be implemented. And what Mr. Hegde had mentioned a point, that there is no strict penalty under the Act. I would like him to kindly read section 30 of the Act, which makes the section 70 of the Information Technology Act applicable. And in case there is a data breach, the punishment is imprisonment up to 10 years. So the Act has provided adequate mechanism in case of data breach. So at the stage of testing the vires of the Act, the court is only required to see whether it lays down the mechanism to prevent misuse and to punish in the case of misuse, which in my understanding does exist in this Act.
Right, I'm going to take this back to Sanjay Hegde, because you mentioned him. Mr. Hegde, two questions to you. One, if the Supreme Court has asked the question of whether or not this in any way threatens our democracy, isn't it fair that we also examine the same question? Because Ashish Dikshit's submission is that we shouldn't pay so much heed to the Supreme Court's observations. I disagree. Secondly, do you agree with what he's saying? Because my problem with the current Act is that it only gives the authority, the UIDAI, the authority to file a complaint. I can't file a complaint if my own data has been leaked. And that in some way takes away my right to legal remedy if I have been wronged. Sanjay Hegde.
Well, as far as going by observations of the Supreme Court is concerned, yes, I by and large agree with my young friend out there that you don't take an observation as a judgment. Having said that, the very fact that judges of the Supreme Court are asking the UIDAI lawyers, look, we know there is this potential problem. It shows you that the judges are aware of the problem. They are trying to find out whether the problem is large enough to render the Act unconstitutional in any manner, and whether there is a fix around it. Of course, judges ask tough questions to test an argument. So I I would leave it at that it is an observation of the judge, but it is entitled to respect. Now comes the question of penalizing. See, you may penalize one individual act, or it is not as if a data breach happens with one hacker going through the database and getting everything, and then you catch him and the matter is at an end. When privacy gets breached, either willingly or unwittingly, then the question is not only of penalizing the perpetrators, the question is of how to try and put as much of the genie back into the bottle as possible. We do not have defined data protection and privacy laws today. In its absence, just to rely on general provisions of the IT Act, to my mind, does not make sense.
Right. So I have one more voice, Ritesh Bhatia. Ritesh, yes or no, do you believe that we're at risk? Yes. Nikhil, I'm going to come to you. I'll open this up as soon as everyone's had a chance to make a statement. Ritesh, please.
Yeah, Faye. I mean, I've been saying this like from day one. We have always been at risk. And time and again it has been proved also. I would say time and again means every week there is one particular data breach, at least one data breach that is happening. Now to answer my friend Ashish, who's been telling that, if at all a breach happens, there is a penalty of 10 years. I mean, to whom has it happened? Up till now only just to those two banks. What about at so many other places where the breaches are taking place? And like massive amounts of breaches are taking place. There has been negligence. There has been like leaks and leaks all across over there. And I always say that whatever we have, even in our current Aadhaar system, is that data really integral? Coming to the triad of data security, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Is it always available when we need it? No. People have to go back and then they say the infrastructure is down, server is not working, something or the other is going on over there. So, firstly, the last mile connectivity is not there. The main purpose for which it was created is really not solving it. Coming to Facebook and Google and smart cards and all other things that they're saying, look, they have not asked for my bank accounts. I'm not linked to them. But here what is happening is all my data, as Sanjay sir rightly said, all the eggs are in one basket. You just take that one basket and it's gone. And the last thing, Faye, I would want to add, it depends upon the intent of the government or of the particular company who wants to use that data. Who doesn't want to use the data? Time and again we've been saying data is the new oil, it's the new oil, it's the new gold. So it all again depends upon what is the intent. Is the intent to micro-target and influence? Okay. Then definitely it's the best and the easiest way to do, Faye.
All right, I'm going to open this up now because everyone's had a chance to speak. I'm going to open this up to the entire panel. Vinit Goenka, hand coming up several times to rebut what is being said. Vinit Goenka, you first, and then Nikhil Pava. Vinit Goenka, go ahead.
Miss Faye, what I like about your names, that is the last alphabet, E. It's about environment of technology. It's about e-governance. It's about education of people. It's about enforcement of laws. And that is what is called as e-governance. E-governance will bring in transparency. It will bring in better days. Now, there will be some cases whereby somebody is trying to do an error in that. Enforcement can be done. There can be laws can be developed. We can evolve things. We cannot show our back to technology. We cannot show to good things about the Aadhaar. Now, there may be people who have apprehension. There may be some questions which are asked by the Supreme Court judges. They have the right and they are doing the good thing. That is going to help us out to evolve a better solution, also to educate the larger people. But I see more or less this has to be a very good piece of technology, probably the best technology available in the world. This is a fantastic piece of technology because this will help us reduce public expenditure, bring in more transparency, reduce chances of fraud.
Right, Nikhil Pava, I have a question for you, and I'm pulling this out of what Shailesh Gandhi said and what the government's response to the Supreme Court was. Now, the data that that the UIDAI has is not particularly about what articles I like to read, how I really believe, what my political convictions are, which side I'm leaning towards. It's data about my identity. Can it be used to manipulate an election, really?
Yes.
Well, it's not just that. You see, what's happened is that data has been copied and stored at state levels and with these state resident data hubs. So you have the Bhamasha database in case of Rajasthan, you have another one in Maharashtra, you have another one in Andhra, and those are collecting all sorts of other data about you, which can be used to build profiles. So, for example, which government schemes you subscribe to. In case of Andhra, the even traffic violations and all petty crimes are being linked to it. So, you know, a person's profile can be created using this. Now, psychographic and behavioral targeting may not be possible using this in particular, but like I mentioned, they can still run algorithms to gather social media information and status updates and then use that linked to this. There's deduplication that's already been done using machine learning algorithms. So these are all possible. It's just a question of when they're going to do it. I want to address one other important point, which I keep hearing, where people say, oh, it's good to have the data. We can't punish everyone just because there's misuse of this data. You know, I'm kind of sick of this argument because it's the same argument that you hear from the NRA about gun control, saying that guns are not bad, it's about people who use them who are bad. We have a global market failure in data protection. Google is responsible for collecting too much data, so is Facebook, so is our government. We need to reduce data collection because, you know, a limited amount of data collection will put fewer people at risk and prevent this kind of behavioral targeting. Most importantly, we need to stop all this linking that's happening. So the steps that we can take, I don't like the way Vineet Goenka converts every argument into a destroy Aadhaar argument, because that's not the point we're making. We're saying do not link it to everything. We're saying limit the amount of data that's being collected. So, you know, you can, if
there is no harm linking it. There is no harm.
Whether Aadhaar should remain or not. No, there is a harm of linking because multiple linked databases can be used to create profiles, Vineet. And we've seen that profiling happening.
What I understand,
it's already happening at a state level in Andhra.
Which can help me to bring in transparency is good. And so we should link it.
It's easy to talk about. It's easy to you know, make kind of motherhood statements and talk from a 30,000 feet perspective.
And
but practically, there are profiles that are being created at a Rajasthan level, at an Andhra level, at a Maharashtra level, which are dangerous for our democracy and dangerous for our country.
Gentlemen.
This is becoming a national security risk.
Driving license database. There may be accidents of planes. We don't stop flying planes.
It's not just about breaches. It's about linking it all together, which compromise people.
Which can evolve.
Everyone who has an Aadhaar can potentially.
Anyone wants to jump in here?
Please
Mr.
understand,
Duggal,
the frauds will come out. People who are disturbed by this are the people who are making noise. Please understand.
You know, this is just attacking a
but, you know, I don't think that's fair.
If there are suggestions which will help us. So I think what Mr. Pandey said, if I see
this
what
government
CEO
is not
Pandey
open to suggestions, Vineet. Every
There
time
may be
suggestions
people
have
who
been
try to
made, even
bridge
in the
it.
Rajya
We'll
Sabha,
have
the
to create
government
security
has
parameters
rejected
around
those
it.
suggestions. We have a major national security risk here.
No, you know, one second. I think, you know, the reason why we're picking up what the Supreme Court is saying today, just as a justification, is because up until now, Vineet, up until now, every time someone has asked a question, the response has been, oh, because you have something to hide, or you're an anti-national, or you have black money in your account, that's why you're questioning Aadhaar. Now, at least when the Supreme Court judges, 5 judges of the Supreme Court actually ask these questions.
Ms. Faye, they're asking the questions.
Which is why I'm quoting the Supreme Court here.
Attorneys answering it. They have not passed judgment. There is a dialogue which is going on, and that is the best part of the democracy.
No. If the Supreme Court is asking the questions, then it must be a valid question.
Will ask questions, and the government has to give an answer. That is a part of it. And this conversation will help. This conversation
the government is not responding to RTI requests, and
for God forbid, there are some flaws.
This kind of Parliament properly.
Right, Pawan Duggal, please go ahead. Pawan Duggal.
This blame does not stand.
I have a fundamental question to ask.
Unfair blame.
Who is going to be responsible when this entire Aadhaar ecosystem data gets misused and India's sovereignty, security and integrity gets impacted? Already, with the majority of this database in foreign
But do you mean when or
agencies,
if, Mr. Duggal?
You see, it's obviously going to happen. It's only a question of when. It's not a question of if. Because with this kind of so much of data flowing across, we are actually sitting on a volcano which is about to burst. We just don't want to believe that this volcano may not burst. Good enough. But quickly realize in today's world, when the different nations of the world are very aggressively taking forward the concept of cyber sovereignty, I think India's cyber sovereignty stands compromised from the word go. Because the fundamental question is, what are we going to do? What kind of effective remedies are we going to provide to individuals whose Aadhaar related data in the Aadhaar ecosystem gets compromised and they have no effective remedy, so much so that they get consigned to a particular lot of data, because a variety of marrying of data allows the complete profiling and the specific targeting of these kinds of people. So I think merely closing eyes won't help.
Aadhaar and we keep every other database, it is safe. That's
nothing. You quickly realize that
we have to stop the Aadhaar. All the problem will be solved.
Please understand, we are right now at a position where I'm saying that Aadhaar is now a given ground reality. You cannot scrap out Aadhaar. But the question is, you can still wake up from your slumber. You can still try to identify loopholes in the Aadhaar ecosystem. You can still try to save Indians from potential.
Why are you assuming that nobody is taking care of that? Why are you assuming? This assumption itself is wrong. The assumption is that if you... See, why are you assuming that nobody is taking care of it?
Shailesh Gandhi?
If there are something...
Shailesh Gandhi, do you want to respond to this?
So the entire assumption is wrong that nobody's been taking care of it.
Well, the question is that till today, India doesn't have a cybersecurity.
My question to you, Mr. Gandhi, is the fact that the government has always rejected the questions. Now, and I keep saying Vinit Goenka has been patient because he's the only one who listens. He's the only one who listens. The rest of the time, RTI queries go unanswered. Journalists have FIRs filed against them for exposing the problems in the Aadhaar system. The UIDAI is not at all generous with its time or its answers. In fact, when people write to the UIDAI on Twitter, which is the only way it will actually respond, and say that, listen, somebody used my Aadhaar to create, to get phone numbers that are not my phone numbers, the UIDAI responds saying, at least you know now. Without Aadhaar, you would have never known. So things like this, I think, is what has caused a sort of crisis of faith with this particular authority. What is your response to the fact that they have to be open to answering questions and to tweaking the system, because the system is obviously flawed?
The problem is the mental attitude of people is not to disclose anything. And that goes from the Prime Minister's degree down to the smallest thing that one asks government. I mean, this is across the nation we are finding this. This applies to courts as well. Courts also are very reluctant to give information about themselves. So this is a problem with everybody in power. They don't want to give information. They don't want to be transparent. Lip service they'll pay, but not actually do anything. However, I was very amused that somebody mentioned that profiling can be done with, if I heard correctly, traffic violations and things like that. And I'm wondering whether that is the kind of profiling we are talking about. And I come back. Faye, you mentioned that you can opt out of WhatsApp. I'm almost willing to bet out of this panel, 75% of us will be on WhatsApp. So yes, theoretically we can say we can opt out. And not one person has bothered to give an answer as to what is the revenue model of WhatsApp. What is the revenue model of Facebook? These have been around and they are growing. Even if we say we have a choice, most of us are not going to opt out of it.
No, the revenue model of Facebook is advertising.
No, please. No, revenue model of WhatsApp, I'm saying. And Facebook, Facebook also, the advertising model is knowing your choices. It's not just blind advertising like you put in a newspaper.
Yes.
It knows the choices of the person who's using Facebook and targets that absolutely.
Who's making it?
And I'm willing to trust Facebook, WhatsApp, everything except the government of India. I think in a democracy, I need to trust my government a little more.
Facebook does not have the ability to arrest me.
Even if the government may be bad, I will change it. How does it matter?
Okay, Nikhil Pava wants to answer your question. Shailesh Gandhi, Nikhil Pava, go ahead.
To be so irrational and arrest me, and if it does,
right. So
I throw it out.
So the business model that
Shailesh Gandhi, we're not talking. Remember this again. Let me quote the Supreme Court. One second, Nikhil. 1 second. Let me quote the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has said, Mr. Gandhi, that we are laying down a law which will affect all future generations. So it's not just the trustworthiness of this government; it's the trustworthiness of every government that will follow in perpetuity. And none of us have seen the future, so we have to make a law that is not based on blind trust. But Nikhil Pava will answer Shailesh Gandhi's questions now.
Right. So in terms of WhatsApp's business model, the first business aspect that it has rolled out is essentially, may I please respond, Mr. Gandhi? So the first feature that WhatsApp's rolled out from a business model perspective is allowing business profiles that can send transactional messages to people. If you want to see a future roadmap, look at what WeChat has done in China, where it also has e-commerce on the platform. These are companies which are heavily funded because WhatsApp is owned by Facebook, which is making enough profit, and they're willing to make losses for the next 4 or 5 years so that they can acquire enough users and then build businesses around it. Facebook did the same thing, Google did the same thing. Their business models will evolve. You don't have to be distrustful just because they don't have a business model at present. But we should be distrustful of all of them, including Facebook and WhatsApp and our government, which is collecting vast amounts of data. In terms of traffic violation, that was just one example. And in Aadhaar, they're also collecting caste-related information, religion-related information. Traffic violation is one part of it. Land record holdings, property holdings, all of this is being linked to Aadhaar, is being connected in the SRDH, and therefore people are being profiled already. It's not a question of whether they'll do it, it's already happening. So I think, we shouldn't trust anyone who collects this much data about us as people, especially in a democracy where the relationship between the citizen and the state means to be that the state has disproportionate power and the citizens need to keep them in check in order to protect their own freedoms. And the Constitution allows us to do that. Any state that's forcefully taking our information from us needs to be looked at with suspicion.
Right, and I just want to, I want to tackle what Mr. Gandhi said about we need to trust our democracy. My problem here, Mr. Gandhi, and I think that the reason we're having this conversation is to not give anybody the ability to completely tear down the democracy. And I think that if we don't put checks and balances, which is what the Supreme Court has also said, at this point, we will be giving future governments the ability to tear down the democracy through this system. And that's what it is about. It's all in the general interest of the democracy and protecting the democracy. Sanjay Hegde wants to come in. Mr. Hegde, go ahead, and then Vineet Goenka. Mr. Hegde.
No, I just wanted to remind Mr. Gandhi and the others that the saying is eternal vigilance is the price of democracy. It's all very nice to say that, we have such a wonderful government, it will do nothing to us. Sorry, sir. The more power the citizen cedes to the government, the more despotic the governments tend to get. And that has been the history of mankind. It's not this government or that. To Mr. Goenka, I just want to say, just imagine your ultimate horror. Tomorrow there is your Congress government coming back in. A Congress government which can have access to Mr. Goenka's bank books, to whom he calls, to who calls him at what point of time, everything profiled. That is not the kind of information I want to give even a friendly government. I want my government to stick to that old adage that it sold to me in 2014. Maximum governance, minimum government. What we are getting with Aadhaar is quite the contrary. And the way the Aadhaar system is reaching itself out to check that even when you are to be cremated, you can't be cremated without an Aadhaar card. What is that? What kind of imperial overreach is that?
Well, Vineet Goenka is smiling, but Sanjay Hegde has actually literally painted his worst nightmare with the opposition in power and access to all of his data. Vineet Goenka, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah. So, please give me some time. And I'm not responding to Mr. Hegde as individual. In this entire panel, nobody's family would have suffered emergency like my family suffered. But let me tell you, even when my family suffered, we had respect for Indraji, and I had belief in the democracy. We have a fantastic democratic system, 70 years. Prime ministers have come and prime ministers have gone. Powers have come and powers have gone. Not a single bullet been fired. Manmohan Singh ji defeated Atal ji, took the power. He got defeated, handed over the power to Modi ji. No heartburns. So barring the 2.5 years of emergency, we have been a very, very matured democracy. I have a faith in this. Even when my personal family has gone through a lot of things in emergency, yet I have a faith in this. And I think we should all respect this democracy. Governments will come, governments will go. I will not feel unsafe in my government or anybody else's government, because we believe that the institution of democracy, which is here, is a fantastic piece. Across the globe, if you see, we are a very, very vibrant democracy.
No, but I agree with you.
Vinit,
I completely agree with you.
Some people.
No, I completely
and none
agree
of the
with
panelists.
you.
I'll just take
one second, if I may. The reason why, I'll come back to you. But I just want to change. No, I agree with that. I empathize with your family. I think that while you're saying that we should have faith in the democracy, my answer is the same. We should also constantly protect our democracy by asking questions, by being vigilant, by using the RTI. No. This entire process. The reason why I believe in doing my job is to protect the democracy.
That is a good thing. But then trying to say that you will be thrown out. No. See, somebody is asking question is fine. They should be answered. Supreme Court has asked questions. They have been answered. Journalists ask questions. They have been answered. But saying that Vineet Goenka, your number will be tracked by another government, so be it. I don't fear because I've not done anything wrong. Nothing happened to my family in emergency. Yes. Parents, people, they were suffering. 2.5 years, they were bad time. So what? The democracy bounced back. I never cast aspiration on Indiraji. We don't speak low about her. Prime ministers will come, prime ministers will go, governments will come, governments will go. But this piece of institution, which is called as democracy here, is vibrant. And Aadhaar itself is very safe. Let me tell you.
All right, Mr. Duggal, do you want to respond to that? Mr. Duggal, do you want to respond to that? I mean, we've got into a slightly grey area of democracy at this point. But, I mean, I want to come back to Aadhaar because the whole point of having this conversation is to continue to protect the democracy. That's what the Supreme Court is doing. That's what we're doing. That's what everybody on the panel is doing. Let's come back to Aadhaar and the fact that the Supreme Court has actually asked, does it give a government or anybody else the ability to tear down our democracy or compromise it, Mr. Duggal?
Well, my question is, today's Indian democracy is irreparably connected with cyber security. The lesser the cyber security parameters in place, the more the chances that the Indian democracy would potentially be attacked. The lesser the kind of cyber security compliances for Aadhaar, the more the chances that the Aadhaar ecosystem data is going to be used. Well, all the time the UIDAI is only talking about the central identities data repository. I want all of us to look beyond. It's not just the central identities data repository, it's the ecosystem. It's all kind of players who are now capturing the so-called Aadhaar data, including biometric data on their own personal or on their own computer systems and computer networks. I'm bothered about that and the misuse of the same. So if a company stores biometric information and 100 million of those records tend to get hacked, see the kind of lack of any effective remedy that potential users will have. So therefore, I'm primarily concerned, how can we ride this tide of the time? How can we make our existing Aadhaar ecosystem more secure? How can we ensure that the Indian democracy and the election mindsets and the election processes does not get potentially compromised or potentially prejudicially impacted by these data merchants, these huge data repositories? Because I think that's the bigger issue that we are missing up. Yes, we all trust our government, we trust the nation, we trust the constitution, and the constitution guarantees our democracy. But at the end of the day, we as Indians also have a duty towards our own self, which is the duty to have adequate cyber security so that breaches of data do not compromise the democracy of the country.
So actually, let me just bring the question down to a very basic question. This whole business of if someone got access to our Aadhaar data, it needn't be the government of the day, it needn't be the government of tomorrow. It could be a third party who hacks the system and accesses the data. And this is like we've kept saying, and about the Supreme Court has also said,
there will be laws which will take care of it. There will be enforcement agencies which will take care of it.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I want to know, what could they possibly do with that data? What ability would it give the thief?
Society will always have criminals. And society will be taken care of. The criminals will be taken care of.
Can I give you an example, Faye?
There may be breaches.
No,
Faye, can I give you an example?
Let me just complete one sentence, gentlemen. Please. Let me just make one sentence. Society will have criminals.
See, Vineet Goenka.
Law will take its time. Law gets evolved.
See, Vineet Goenka, no, I understand what you're saying.
There will be people who will try to disturb things.
For example, if I had my entire life savings in cash, right? And let's assume, and we all do this when you're traveling overseas, you have all of your money in traveler's checks.
It will
You don't
not
put
go.
it all in one
Just
pocket.
because somebody
in case
has
that
your,
pocket gets
just
fixed.
because somebody
You
has your
spread it
Aadhaar.
out into different
See, I'll
bags
tell you,
and different pockets.
all of. I have only one bank account and I don't fear telling the number also because nobody can take the data. See, it requires various things. You will require a mobile to get an OTP to take your money. See, my problem is not data security because I think there is an ample thing. My problem is data sovereignty. Miss Faye, I'll tell you one bigger problem than taking away your money. If somebody deposits money in your account, Miss Faye, and claims that you are calling him for the panel only because you have been paid, that will be bigger risk than taking away your money. So the challenges will come up. As the technology will come, there will be new challenges. There will be criminals who will be running ahead of the law enforcers. What we'll have to do as a society,
No, I'm sorry. What did you suggest about me paying people on the panel? One second. Wait, Goika. Wait, what did you suggest about me paying people on the panel?
No, I'm saying if somebody, the risk is not that money will going out. If somebody deliberately puts some money in your account, if somebody tries to put money in your account and then tells her, see, Miss Faye has taken it, that is a bigger risk than taking the money away. There's the money taking away is a lesser risk. Risk is somebody putting the money in your account. So what we'll have to do is discuss these kind of serious challenges, not the lighter challenges. Lighter challenges can be taken care of. Somebody tries to corrupt you without you being corrupt.
All right, Nikhil Pava. Also, let me just put this on record.
So
let me just put this on record.
We'll have to think about this kind of criminal things.
Fair enough.
We'll have to put
mirror now. One second.
Okay, so we will have to do what, we'll have to put
fair enough. I just want to put this on record for our viewers.
Let me make a sentence, ma'am. Please let me make one sentence. So what will it do is just...
I have to bring in, I have to bring in Nikhil Pava. He's been waiting for a while. Shailesh Gandhi's been waiting for a... Okay, safeguards. Nikhil Pava, go ahead. Before Nikhil Pava starts, I want to put it on record for our viewers. Mirror Now is the only channel right now that doesn't pay any of our panelists. None of these people are paid any money to appear on the channel. They're all here for generally out of the greater good, concern for the greater good. It is an editorial policy that we do not give anybody any money to appear on the channel.
Did you understand my question, Ms. Faye?
Nikhil Pava, go ahead.
Ms. Faye, did you answer?
Yes, I understood what you said. I'm just clarifying for our viewers. Nikhil Pava, go ahead. Nikhil, go ahead. I'm running out of time. Yes.
Right. So,
Nikhil.
So essentially, the problem, the larger problem is that there is already data that's out there. It's been leaked by government departments. Governments acknowledge that about 200 websites published a lot of demographic and related Aadhaar data on the web. I've seen some of this data because they were available on Excel sheets online with religion information, caste information on occasions. All of this information is already public. It's more than 135 million people whose data has already been compromised. This data has probably been scraped, and therefore it can be used for micro-targeting. These are serious issues, and just by saying that the CIDR is safe, or that just because it's data that's being collected and it can be misused, there'll be laws to prevent this. Even if there are laws to prevent this, what do you do if they're used to influence elections? You know, so therefore, what I'm continuously saying is we need to limit data collection by itself. We need to reduce data linkages, because linkages then allow deduplication across multiple databases. They increase the risk of leakage of data. If, let's say, 100 people have collected your data with a private party or a government, the propensity for leaking of that data is much higher. If they're all linked to a single number, which is Aadhaar, the ability for someone to connect data in one database with data in another database is much higher. So we're increasing the risks by allowing large amounts of data to be collected by the government, by third parties, without the law being in place.
Technology is not a solution. You can't.
No, but see, Vineet, what's happening is that there is a global market failure. If you look at the EU GDPR, if I may finish without Vineet, I did not interrupt when you spoke. If I may just finish, if you look at the way, if you look at Vineet,
so what will do?
Vineet, please finish, Vineet. I did not interrupt you.
Can I just give you one example?
Please allow me to finish, Vineet.
There
is the example that I've given was about gun control.
Unnecessary fear in the mind of citizens.
Vineet, can I just finish?
So
I didn't interrupt a single time when you spoke, right? So please be respectful here.
I'm very sorry, Nikhil, you're a good friend. I'm very sorry, but I'm...
No, please.
Please go ahead. Please go
ahead. No, allow me to finish. It's the same analogy as gun control.
Please go ahead.
So you can go out and say just because there are guns out there and some people misuse it, they shouldn't they should still be allowed, and only punish the people who misuse it. If someone's been killed, someone's been killed. You can't allow this kind of wanton data collection and linkage everywhere.
Okay. Let's no. See. I think fundamentally the questions that we have to answer here, and I'm taking this to Ritesh Bhatia. One second, Vineet Goenka. I've given you the lion's share of this show. One second, Vineet Goenka. But I've given you the lion's share of the speaking time on this show.
Thank you,
The questions we have to answer is point number one.
Thank you,
Is it possible at all to hack into the Aadhaar database? That's the first question. The second question.
It's leaking data.
What happens?
I mean, it's been
What
500 rupees, remember that
does
case?
the thief have if they get access to that data? Ritesh Bhatia, is it possible? What power does it give them?
See, Faye,
Can I give you an example?
there is no such technology which cannot be hacked. There is absolutely no such technology in the world where you can say, okay, this technology can never ever be hacked. Moreover, there is something called as an insider threat. In the entire cybersecurity community, everybody knows that the worst fear, that where the data can go, I can trust my government. Viniji, I can definitely trust my government. I can trust any government. But when it comes to trusting the person who's handling the data, definitely no. And they have proved it time and again as to how the data leaks have taken place. Faye, to answer, to come to your next question, which is about what can happen to the data. I've already told you about the micro-targeting, profiling, and identity theft. You must have observed from the moment, I mean, you know, when I did a sample survey with few people who had linked their Aadhaar with their banks, they have suddenly started seeing a spurt in the number of calls they are getting for loans and other kind of things. Now, is it just a mere coincidence that it is happening all of it at the same time, or is it something else? Next time, whenever we sit for the show, Faye, I'm going to show you 10 exclusive, very, very unique cases where the Aadhaar has been misused. Definitely, I will just bring 10 of them. I have hundreds of such cases, but I will definitely bring 10 such cases where I can show, okay, if this has been leaked, what all can happen to a citizen or even to a major population as large.
You know, I also want to, let's take the basic identity, and I'm going to tackle this now. If someone gets your Aadhaar data, phone number, biometrics, bank account details, address, email ID, right? What do they know? They know your religion from your name. They know your place of residence. They have your email ID, they have your phone number. You'll start getting SMSs. You'll start getting WhatsApp forwards that may or may not be true, targeting and making you think a certain way. We don't know where, and the worst part about WhatsApp forwards is you don't know where the source is, who's made those forwards and why are they sending it to you. If you look at your groups, you will realize that it is dodgy and scary how some WhatsApp groups get pro one idea and some WhatsApp groups get pro the other idea. That is the risk you're running.
Absolutely.
Because then you will put all of that data. Right now it's staggered, right? You have to get it from different spaces. Yes. You'll put all of that in one place, put a big bow on it and allow someone to hack that. That's the question that the Supreme Court is asking. All I'm saying is we need to find ways to stop it and make sure it never happens. Sanjay Hegde, go ahead. Ashish, I'm coming to you after this.
Yeah. Now we've all been talking about the hackers being from within India. We know that the Russians tried to influence the US elections and they've actually done it. Think tomorrow of a Pakistan or a China wanting to influence Indian elections. You have given them all the data out here with a bow on it. If they say that we want party X to win or we want party Y to win, then anybody who has access and data slips out of the country or out of any borders very fast. Just imagine what they can do with it. You've gone on about how vulnerable your data is when it is in Indian hands alone. Imagine it slipping into foreign hands, and foreign hands which are not entirely friendly to your democracy. Then do you see what danger we are in?
I think it's already with them.
All right. We have
It
to
is with them.
close
Then the
the show
question
right
is how are they
now.
going to use it?
In conclusion,
And
right,
what
I've
do
run
we
out of
answer this?
time. I've run out of time. I'm
Miss
going
Faye,
to.
can I answer this? Miss
Yes.
Faye?
Yes,
I
unfortunately,
answer
Vineet
it? Because
Goenka,
this
I've
is
run
a
out
very
of time, but I
pertinent
promised
question.
my
Can I answer?
panelists and the viewers that we will come back and we will do more conversations about Aadhaar, because I believe that this is the most important conversation we can be having in the country right now. Also, taxes, efficiency, and everything else that we're talking about. This movement of Aadhaar and the Supreme Court's decision is perhaps the most important thing to focus on, given where it will take us and how it will decide our future. What the Supreme Court is deciding is effectively this. If you put all of our Aadhaar data into one bucket and you are not able to assure whether or not that bucket has any holes in it, and so far we have enough evidence to suggest that there are several holes in that bucket, should we stop putting more data in that bucket? Should we at least give our citizens the option of opting out of the bucket altogether and say, I don't feel safe, I don't really want to do that? Should it be compulsory or should it not? As of now, it's not compulsory. If you're not safe, you're not confident, don't do it until the Supreme Court tells us what its decision is. Until then, and I'm going to keep saying it, your phone number, your email ID, and a lot of your other data has already gone out in databases. It's very likely that your internet company and your mobile phone company and a bunch of other guys have sold your phone number as part of their database, which means that your WhatsApp is now free game for anyone. Be super suspicious about everything you read on WhatsApp. More often than not, 99% it's a lie. If you've read it on WhatsApp, it's a lie. Double check, verify, check everything before you want it or before you allow it to change your mind. Remember that your vote is the most powerful thing in a democracy. You have the ability to change your government, and you only have that ability once in 5 years. So everybody will want to take advantage of your vote. Treat it like the most important thing you have. Guard it with your life. Refuse to allow anybody access to your opinion. Whether Aadhaar or not, we won't let them manipulate our votes, because we are not as stupid as they think we are. We're actually a lot smarter than our governments. Thanks for watching.